On paper, this weighs 9,000 pounds. That's the footprint of a small house, and yet it accelerates quicker than a lot of German sports cars. You can hide weight with horsepower, but you can't hide it from momentum. Today, we find out where the engineering ends and the laws of physics begin. What's it like? Buckle up, my friends. Let's go for a drive. Now, the good thing is we're actually testing this Sierra EV in conditions that match actual ownership. Because, come on, nobody buys one of these to drive it exclusively in Southern California in consistent temps of 72 degrees Fahrenheit. So here's 9,000 pounds, 785 pounds of torque, and whatever grip these 24-inch all-season tires can negotiate with the road surface. The spec sheet says 760 horsepower, but it doesn't mention how it's delivered, which is all at once, without warning, from 0 RPM. There's no build, no anticipation. You request forward motion, and this 9,000-pound truck complies with the enthusiasm of my Labrador Retriever when he hears the word walk. And a launch pins you into this Denali leather while your spine has to scramble to file a complaint with your brain. Given its size and mass, I think this doesn't as much accelerate as it does relocate. The two motors, there's one at the front, one at the rear, and the way they're programmed have figured out how to telegraph what you're asking for from your right foot and deliver the appropriate amount of power to the ground. Whether you're just accelerating hard or exiting a corner, you feel that rear motor shoulder most of the load because, of course, this has to drive like a proper rear-wheel drive truck, and there's a lot more torque that's delivered at that rear axle. On the other hand, throttle calibration is definitely a highlight. And with 785 pounds of torque, this thing could easily be undrivable, but they've carefully calibrated the way the throttle doles out torque to both those front and rear motors. Bury the throttle and full fury arrives, but first 30% of throttle travel feels almost gentle. The motors actually do something clever if you're paying attention. When you lean into the throttle exiting a corner, you can feel that rear axle working a little bit harder to put down more power than the front. And on snowy road surfaces like this, it actually helps rotate the rear of the truck, which is in contrast to some conventional all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive truck systems, which would have you understeering straight into a ditch. It's not playful exactly, but it's not a plowing mess of something that's the size of a small downtown Toronto condo. The torque split is subtle, if not invisible, but the results certainly aren't. Floor it from a stop and all four tires scramble for traction, despite traction control doing all that it can. And that's 785 pounds of torque having a disagreement with physics in real time. On its max setting, like I have it set right now, the one-pedal driving mode actually decelerates like it has proper engine braking. And from my perspective, it's fantastic to see a full-size EV like this have actual opinions about slowing down. Passing at highway speeds is incredible. It's instant and it's alarming. No downshift, no delay, just instant forward progress that makes all the traffic around you look like it's going back in time. The good thing is that max range battery pack sits low in the floor, and you'd think more weight would make this slower, but it actually makes it more planted when you're accelerating in a straight line. And perhaps this is one of the ways GMC found a loophole in the physics textbook. With this one-pedal driving, energy recovery during regen feels proportional to how much you've sinned with the throttle. Aggressive driving, aggressive regen, and I think this truck keeps a ledger. Subscribers get notified when new episodes drop on this channel. Non-subscribers hope the algorithm will show it to them eventually, and if you want to control when you see new episodes from this channel on YouTube, well, that's what the subscribe button does. Four-wheel steering changes this truck's personality fundamentally, and you'd think that you could not overcome the size, the dimensions of this Sierra Denali EV with four-wheel steer, but it makes a huge difference. I've been able to fit this into parking spots as if it were 5 feet shorter. It is just incredible. At highway speeds, the rear steer in phase with the fronts for more stability, but the one thing the steering doesn't really do is communicate. The steering's precise, and when you point it, it turns, but the connection between your hands and the contact patches of the front axle are more professional acquaintance than close personal friends. The CrabWalk feature actually works and diagonal parking becomes possible, but there is one problem. When you do this in public, everyone is watching, and you can't do it subtly. You're either the guy doing the weird parking thing, or you're the normal guy parking in spots 3, 4, 5, 6 spaces away. There's no middle ground. You have to decide which kind of person you want to be today. Braking is where 9,000 pounds remembers exactly what it is. Initial bite from the rotors is great. You get a lot of confidence in this brake pedal, and that's great. It's progressive, it's reassuring, kind of like a handshake you'd get from somebody who played football. And I did take the opportunity to test it over repeated stops, which is not something any normal driver would do with this Sierra Denali EV, but you do feel some heat building up in the braking system. The pedal stays firm. There's no fade discernible in the pedal itself, but you can just feel that braking is going to take you a little bit longer after you've done some heavy repeated stops. But let me be clear, that's not a failure. That's thermodynamics politely requesting a word. For a racer like me, I've definitely had to change my driving style because you really can't trail brake this into a corner. You need to get your braking done in a straight line, because if you ask the tires to brake and turn simultaneously, there's only a limited amount of grip available to do those things. Normally, full-size trucks ride like full-size trucks. They're pretty rigid, they're kind of bouncy. This uses air springs and adaptive dampers, and it isolates you from the road surface completely. This is where GMC spent the money, and it shows. Potholes become distant rumors, events that may or may not be happening to someone else's vehicle. Secondary body movements, the kind of thing that reveals when an engineering team didn't spend a lot of money on damping, are almost non-existent. And raise this to its tallest height for maximum ground clearance, and compliance goes away slightly but never completely disappears. This rides more like a full-size luxury SUV than any pickup. The other day when I had the opportunity to play with this in some interesting corners when the road surface was fairly dry, I found that the suspension is working overtime to convince me that this drives like a normal vehicle. Through the corners, even with some bumps in them, body control is genuinely impressive. And I don't know how they do it, but they've been able to make this 9,000 pound truck corner relatively flat. Push this through the corners, and yeah, there's a little bit of body roll, but it's very well controlled, it's predictable, and all very well managed. As you'd expect, chassis feedback is fairly muted, so if you intend to play with this at its limits, care is definitely needed. The chassis telegraphs its limits faintly. Whether you're listening is your business. If you want to support this channel beyond just watching, the merch store is open, and your support means more time to produce episodes like this, less time worrying about manufacturer blacklists. No pressure, just an option. The seating position places you at the height of an air traffic controller, and you're surveying lesser vehicles like a benevolent dictator observes his troops. Forward visibility is excellent, as you'd expect. Rearward visibility is another matter altogether. If you're the shoulder checking type, the C-pillars are massive, the bed's long, and this camera system isn't optional, it's survival equipment. Trust the cameras, they have no reason to lie. I just wish they didn't display the blind spot camera information in this center screen. And good news, physical buttons have survived the apocalypse, but just barely. The climate controls remain real physical switches that you can actually manipulate without having to look. Like all GM cars, the steering wheel buttons make sense. And of course, this has Super Cruise, and there's an LED strip here at the top of the steering wheel. Green means hands-free, blue means the highway ended, and red means you should have been paying attention about 3 seconds ago. This massive screen handles everything else, but the good news is that Google is built in, which means it acts like software designed by people who actually design software. You'll still want some muscle memory for the volume knob, and thankfully an actual volume knob still exists. The panoramic roof doesn't open, but it actually doesn't need to. It floods the cabin with light and makes this massive interior feel like a loft apartment that happens to do 0 to 60 in a split second. When you're spending 6 figures on a pickup truck, expectations are real, and it's clear that all the materials they chose here are intentional. The stitching in the upholstery is deliberate. The open-pore wood trim is real wood, not vinyl attending a costume party. Now, spend some time in the cabin, as I have, and you'll find some evidence of cost-cutting, like the lower dash materials. They're definitely plastic. Some of the switches around the cabin feel like they were borrowed from vehicles costing half as much, which is probably true. Think of this as 90% private jet and 10% connecting flight through Detroit, and most people won't notice that 10%. Rear seat passengers get first-class legroom, but coach amenities. Heated cushions, yes. Heated seatbacks, no. Heated cushions, heated seatbacks, that's 2 elements. Hear me out. What if we did just one? They're sitting on it anyway. They won't notice. The person who made that decision has never ridden in the back of their own truck in January. And this is a 6-figure truck. Power everything, screens everywhere, cameras that see in dimensions that humans can't even perceive. I have to open this with my hand, like an animal. Hyundai figured that out. Hyundai. When it comes to cargo, forget about the bed. That e-trunk is a bit of a story. It's 11 cubic feet of weatherproof, secure storage where the internal combustion engine isn't. It's perfect for keeping those things out of sight from parking lot opportunists, and this center console storage is just massive. That multi-pro midgate transforms this from a regular pickup truck into something genuinely useful when it comes to carrying long cargo. Now, I'm not going to demonstrate it because it is winter, and I'm certain someone else on YouTube has done a better job than I would anyway. And overall, as a pickup truck, this is extremely usable on a daily basis, and it's very clear that the team at GMC took their jobs seriously. The like button tells YouTube to share this episode with other people like you interested in this video, and if this gave you more information than a brochure or a press release, well, that's the entire ask. Those are my impressions after a week with the keys. Here's what owners are discovering after thousands of miles and much more financial and emotional investment. First, the consensus positive, and the towing ability of this truck is genuinely impressive in the real world. Owners describe this 9,000-pound truck as a massive anchor that makes this thing impervious to crosswinds, semi-truck wake, and the general chaos of interstate travel. One forum member said, "This pulls better than any diesel I've owned," and that's high praise from people who have owned diesels. On the other hand, a standard level 2 charger takes more than a full day to charge this battery. The trick is a 19 kilowatt setup, and for charging at home, it's a necessity, not a luxury. Budget for the electrician. Owners call this the brick penalty. At 75 miles an hour, efficiency drops to 1.5 miles per kilowatt hour. And on the freeway, nobody drives 75 miles an hour. We both know this. On the highway, you're driving 82 miles an hour. I'm driving 82 miles an hour. The range estimate knows we're driving 82 miles an hour. It's judging us, and it has every right to. Owners note that the range display lies to you for the first hour of any trip. It calculates based on EPA efficiency, apparently, not what you're actually doing. So if you hook up a trailer, see 380 miles, then watch range crater down to reality over the next 50 miles as the system catches up. Plan accordingly. And to keep this beast charged on road trips, you really need those 350 kilowatt chargers to be working at those advertised speeds. On a regular 50 kilowatt charger, well, you're going to be there for a long time. That's just math. If you're towing, disable one pedal driving. Otherwise, lifting off the throttle triggers regen, then pushes the trailer forward, which activates trailer brakes. The result is a push-pull oscillation that owners describe as nauseating. And thankfully, the fix for that problem is dead simple once you know it exists. The nearest competition is, of course, the F-150 Lightning, which costs less, offers less, and unfortunately has now been discontinued. The Rivian R1T is more athletic, but less truck. The Cybertruck is, well, it's a different conversation for a different therapist. Owners who are enjoying their Sierra EVs understand what they bought, which is a technological marvel that demands their engagement, not a diesel replacement that happens to run on electricity. So make sure you know the difference before buying. If you own one of these or have a lot of quality seat time in one of these, let me know in the comments what I got right and what I got wrong, because real-world owner experiences are much more valuable than anything I can learn in a week-long press loan, and I always read those comments. So did GMC defeat physics here? Well, in a straight line and over bumps, absolutely. This is a triumph of engineering over mass. It's more capable, quicker, and comfortable than any truck this size has a right to be. But in the corners and braking zones, they negotiated a settlement. Most of it works brilliantly, but push hard enough, brake late enough, carry too much speed into a decreasing radius corner, and you feel 9,000 pounds clear its throat. The magic doesn't end, it just needs to be respected, and you can feel the mass waiting to take over if you get a little sloppy. And I've been thinking about this after a week behind the wheel. This truck is definitely looking for a very specific buyer. It's for someone who wants capability without compromise, technology without any excuses, and presence without apology. If you tow 500 miles a day, the charging infrastructure isn't ready for you yet. If you need a work truck that costs like a work truck, this isn't it. But if you want a machine that embarrasses sports cars at stoplights, hauls an ATV to the trailhead, and makes valets visibly nervous, GMC built exactly that. It's a monument to EV pickup excess, and remember that you're driving a monument, not a Miata. That's the 2026 GMC Sierra EV Denali Max range. Subscribe if you like this, don't if you don't. Comment if you disagree, and visit the merch store if you want to support more of these. See you on the next one.